The Economic and Organised Crimes Office has sent out invitation letters to directors of Unibank, Beige, Construction Royal and Sovereign Banks. The 5 banks that were shut down at the beginning of this month after the Bank of Ghana declared them insolvent. The 5 are to be interrogated on their roles in the collapse of their banks. Their appearance should mark the beginning of a formal probe by EOCO into how the banks failed. Joining us is Joseph Opoku-Gakpo joins me in the studio with what he's been picking from his sources about the invitation. Now, Joseph, what more can you share?
So we gather that this is a communication that's gone to them mainly through their lawyers and indicated to them that they would want them to come respond to questions. From what we gather, EOCO has actually begun a formal probe. They've been studying the latest Bank of Ghana documents that had emerged in connection with how the banks collapsed. And so based on that, our sources indicate that the specifics in terms of the names that emerged in that particular report, communication has actually gone out to them, asking them to show up at EOCO this week for some level of interrogation. And so they've been asked to show up with their lawyers and to make the point. Our sources, they indicate that their lawyers are being asked to bring them there to EOCO for a conversation. It was an open invitation that says it's this week. So the arrangements and the conversations are ongoing, which will then make the point that this is the specific dates that you are expected to appear at the premises of EOCO. But it's this week that the directors of these entities would be showing up at EOCO as they continue their official probe into what exactly led to the collapse of
Now, is this invitation limited to the directors or any other persons whose names may have come up?
Yes. So to quote our sources there, they indicate that the Bank of Ghana report that I made reference to earlier, all the names that were cited in that particular report as people who had something to do with the collapse of the banks, whether a director, whether a shareholder, anyone whose name come up in those reports in relation to these 5 banks are the people that they're asking to show up at EOCO for the conversation.
All right. So these are the 5 banks that recently collapsed, also at the beginning of this month. Now, what do we also know about the 2 banks that went down last year? That's UT Bank and Capital Bank.
So this is something that they've been looking into for more than 6-7 months now at the level of EOCO. We are told that they are almost completing and putting finishing touches to their report, after which they would forward their recommendations on that to the Office of the Attorney General. But at this stage, the indication is that the finishing touches to the EOCO report following the interrogation of the officials of UT and Capital Bank, that is what is being done, and then the documents and the recommendations would eventually be forwarded to the Office of the Attorney General for the necessary action.
All right, thank you very much, Joseph Opoku-Gakpo, bringing us that update. Now, joining us in the past week has been serializing contents of a Bank of Ghana report on the series of events leading to the collapse of UT and Capital Banks in August last year. To put it into context and bring the story of the 5 other banks that collapsed at the beginning of this month closer home, more than 700 workers lost their jobs in last year's dissolution. Along with it, the affected workers lost whatever benefits they were enjoying and are yet to receive their benefits. Thousands more are expected to lose their jobs in the recent collapse of 5 banks. Joining us is Justice Bade, who has been speaking with some ex-staff of UT and Capital Banks and shares their harrowing tales of what is likely to befall their other colleagues who are likely to have the same fate.
This time last year, Raymond was a deputy manager at the now defunct Capital Bank until the bank blew up its working capital, leaving it bankrupt. New owners of the bank had promised workers like Raymond job security. That did not happen. He was sacked, and 1 year on, he's yet to be paid his benefits.
I'm not the type of person who wants to be idle. So I find it difficult to cope with the current situation now. Cooking has been one of my passion and growing up. So I started what we call the rat kitchen, where I supply foods to people at financial institutions. So we come up with a menu, you choose, and then normally too I do more of grilling during the weekend for people at functions.
This is the Bank of Ghana headquarters, from where the fate of Capital and UT Bank was decided in August of 2017. 1 year on, 5 more banks have collapsed. with a scandal that has hit the sector in the last 2 weeks. No one knows who the central bank will be going after next. And that has left thousands of people working in the banking sector sitting on tenterhooks. UT and Capital Bank had more than 1,200 workers. Most of them have been sacked since the bank's collapse, but many of them, afraid of victimization by their old employers and prospective ones, have been forced into silence. I'm going to meet Ernestina Jesse, not her real name though, one of them who has agreed to speak to me. She has asked that I keep her identity secret.
A lot of people, especially the ladies, are scared to talk. The person who is supposed to protect you, the ordinary staff, is a friend to this big man who has taken bad decisions leading to the collapse of this bank, rendering you jobless. So you have to be careful. So a lot of people are afraid because of the kind of backing our directors appear to have.
Ernestina, a single mother of one, worked with Capital Bank for 7 years, including the days when it was just a savings and loans company. Now she says she cannot even afford to pay her hospital bills.
I haven't been lazy. For 10 years, I have not stayed home for a full month without going to work. So God knows that I am not lazy. So if I have put in 10 years of my youth to work, and through no fault of mine, my company has collapsed, I believe God has seen my plight and will make a way.
There are people who really have reduced, they had, they started a career, they had a certain vision, they're probably doing very well, and suddenly they've lost everything. How we deal with this matter is absolutely critical for how institutions are going to develop in this country. Because if what the reports that have come out are true, then we are on the verge of creating an oligarchy in this country. Somebody steals a chicken and he's in remand for he stays in remand for 3 years, 4 years. I mean, and somebody's accused of taking over 15% of our national income. This should go to court, and all of us should see that a trial, the state has prosecuted this thoroughly.
Back at the reception, dancing has gone deep into the night. But people like Ernestina and Raymond, living in uncertainty of what tomorrow may bring, continue to wait that what is due them is paid, and those responsible for bringing their years of toil to a crashing end will pay the price. Justice Paidu, Joy News, Accra.
Well, Joy News has been serializing a report, a Bank of Ghana report on the affected banks, which raises serious financial infractions against the banks, some directors and customers of the banks. But Dr. Kwabena Donkor, ranking member on the Employment and Social Welfare Committee of Parliament, tells Joy News the directors of the affected banks were not contacted during the auditing. He says the affected workers should be paid their severance.
The worst about Bank of Ghana handling the situation is that my information is that the directors and managers who have to be held accountable at UT and Capital had not even been given a copy of the audit report to answer for issues raised by auditors.
Meaning their inputs were not taken at the time the auditing was being done?
Well, the auditing was done after the banks had been shut down. But if we have to prosecute, if we have to go to the next level, natural justice demands that
Everybody's given a fair hearing.
A fair hearing. And the norm with audits is that you are given what we call a management letter, where all the queries are raised, and then you answer. It is only after that that the auditors take a final decision. Bank of Ghana is short-circuiting procedures for whatever reasons, and I am beginning to think it's to cover their own inadequacy, to cover their own lack of professionalism, to cover letting down the public. So they should go by the right procedures. You don't take a report that, let's not forget that the directors and managers are also Ghanaians. Right. Under our constitution, they have a right to justice. For some of them, the first time they are hearing of the issues is when they appear before EOCO or what they read from the media. It's not right. Let's give them a fair chance. If they have to pay for their sins, if they are found culpable, let's do it. But Bank of Ghana must not escape. Thousands of workers are sitting home, not even their severance. So Bank of Ghana must ensure that their severance is paid immediately. They made money from the mess. They made money from the mess.
All right, and going back to this story about the collapse of UT and Capital Banks, we've been getting some responses. First, the response from Prince Kofi Amabing, who was the chief executive of UT Bank. He has been reacting to the collapse and saying why he thinks that his bank collapsed back then. I'm going to be sharing with you his comments, what he had to say about it. So here, it's the story is on myjoyonline.com, and the former managing director of UT Bank, he has admitted his outfit lost its vision, which partly led to the collapse of UT Bank. Now, Prince Kofi Amwabing, in a foreword to a book written by Samuel Ochre, former UT Bank staff, also blamed what he describes as diverse cultures from different banks for the challenges that led to the bank's collapse. Now, this is his quote. The UT family started with one of the strongest corporate cultures based on sound values, including respect for all, integrity, professionalism, stepping up to the plate, and Ubuntu. He said in Fate of System Thinking, Lessons for Decision Optimization, UT Bank is one of 7 local banks dissolved by the Bank of Ghana for various reasons, including insolvency. Now, the central bank revoked the license of 2 commercial banks, that's UT Bank and Capital Bank, in August last year. So that is his response. Now, the former managing director of Capital Bank, he has also put out a statement indicating that the amount of money that the Bank of Ghana paid to them, as in their bank, was actually 620 million Ghana cedis and not 610 million Ghana cedis, as has been reported. He goes on to talk about the fact that they have accounted for all the funds that were given to them by the Bank of Ghana. He details how these funds were utilized. Now, those are the responses that we're getting from the managing directors of the 2 banks that went down last year. That's UT Bank and Capital Bank. You're watching Joy News Prime. We're taking